Welcome back to Anxious Faith from Our Daily Bread Ministries. I'm James Burke. Now, in episode 31, we shared the story of Josh, a young Aussie guy who bravely shared about his 15-year-long addiction to pornography. So many people wanted to thank Josh for helping them feel less alone in their own battle, and yet Josh's story only covered one side of the coin. Something we weren't able to touch on in that episode is the fact that is often ignored. Porn is not just an issue for guys. In fact, because of that misconception that it's mainly a problem for boys and men, girls and women who are struggling with a pornography addiction can often feel even more isolated and ashamed of their struggle. And those feelings can hold them back from reaching out for support. Thankfully, there's a growing awareness of just how many girls struggle with porn, and that's why we're excited to chat with Amanda Anaestad from the Victory Collective, a ministry run specifically to help women and girls be equipped and resourced to begin their journey of recovery from a porn addiction. Amanda shares how it was her own addiction that led to her and a friend starting the Victory Collective. Because when she first started to look for help, all she could find were resources for men. So join us as Amanda shares her own story, what she's learned along the way about the importance of community, but also of confession, and how God can bring lasting healing to anyone struggling with a porn addiction. Amanda, it's lovely to have you with us today. Why don't you
Thanks for
start by
having me.
telling us a little bit about yourself and who you are and what you do?
Yeah. My name is Amanda. I am 29 years old, right? I'm 29, just turned 29. I have a baby boy who just turned 1. We live in North Carolina in the US, and my husband is in the Air Force. So
Okay.
he's a pilot in the Air Force and is in training right now.
Mm.
Um, And I run a ministry. I started a ministry with my best friend called the Victory Collective, and it's to help women navigate their porn recovery journeys.
Mm.
Um, and so I'll get more into that later, probably. But yeah,
Yep.
that's a little about me.
Yeah, that's amazing. And look, this is one of the things we're really appreciative for is that you are so open about your journey and have been through starting the Victory Collective. So why don't we start there? Why don't we kind of, as much as we don't want to glorify the things we've been through or the dark points in our life, I think it's really important for people to hear that they are not the only ones who've gone through what they've gone through. So we'd love to hear a bit of your story if we can.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Um, so my story begins when I was 13.
Mm.
I was in 8th grade. I had gotten my first boyfriend, which is funny to think about because it was just like a 13-year-old relationship. We weren't doing anything. Probably
Yep.
lasted after 2 weeks and or lasted for two weeks. Um, but it got me thinking that I would have to kiss somebody one day.
Mm.
And that terrified me. Just as a little 13-year-old girl, I was like, okay, not this person, but my
Mm.
future husband. I don't know how to do that. And so very innocently, I turned to YouTube and I would just watch romance movies and, kissing scenes like the end of The Notebook and all those things. And it was just because I was nervous and I didn't know
Mm.
what to do but because of that content that I was searching, YouTube popped up a suggested YouTube video, and I
Mm.
was just clicking on them because they were all like romance scenes. But there was one particular one that was pornography,
Mm.
and it was two women and they were nude and it was just there, and it popped up as a suggested video. And so I clicked on it, not knowing what it was, and immediately it just latched onto my brain.
Wow.
Like, it was something that I had never seen before. I was nervous. I knew that I probably shouldn't be looking at it,
Mm.
but at the same time, I was excited about it, and it was just all the emotions at once.
Yeah.
And I couldn't stop thinking about it, and so I started looking up that kind of content on YouTube,
Mm.
and just started watching what I was able to find because there were some filters on YouTube, but
Mm.
not too many.
Yeah.
Um, but I kind of hit a wall with what I was able to find on YouTube, and I became very quickly desensitized to that content. And so I chose to Google the word pornography.
Mm.
And I just clicked on the first link that came up. I didn't even know what I was going to see or be exposed to. And it immediately just launched me into a decade-long struggle with
Wow.
pornography. Um, and so I say for about a year, this is just guessing, but I think for like about a year, I watched porn every day, multiple
Wow.
times a day, totally in secret, but
Mm.
I didn't feel remorse about it.
Oh
I
wow.
would just do it, and again, I knew that I shouldn't be, but I didn't really care at that point.
Mm.
And I, so I was in eighth and ninth grade at this time, like 13 or 14. And I had known, I'd grown up in a Christian home and I had known God, but it wasn't until 10th grade that I accepted Him for
Mm.
myself and actually started a relationship with Him.
Yeah.
And it was around that point that I realized, I feel like I kind of woke up from a trance
Mm.
where I realized what I had been doing. And I also realized that I couldn't stop. Like I had
Yeah.
tried to stop and I just couldn't. There was everything in me pulled me back to it.
Mm.
And so after that point, I had given my life to Christ and he was just doing a work on my heart, but I was still so ashamed. And instead of watching it and feeling no remorse, I would watch it and feel just enormous shame for what I was doing.
Yeah.
And that continued for years through high school. Um, and I was convinced 110% that I was the only girl in the world to struggle with this
Yeah.
because I had heard that it was a guy's thing that you see TV shows where they talk about it being a guy's thing, and even within church I had only
Mm.
ever heard our pastor say, men, if you struggle with porn, or wives, if your husbands struggle with porn, but I had never ever heard women or girls, young girls, if you struggle with porn. And so I was convinced that I was alone in this.
Mm.
Um, and so I just kept it to myself. And there was one time in high school when I wrote a letter to my best friend Katie, and Katie will come into the story later on also, but I wrote a letter to her and I told her everything. And this was probably, so we met in ninth grade. This was probably 11th or 12th grade
Okay.
that I
Yeah.
did this. I can't remember. It was later on, like right before graduation.
Mm.
And I told her everything in this letter. And then I got so nervous and I ripped it up and I threw it in the river behind our house because I was convinced somebody was going to find it in the trash can or
Mm.
wherever I put it. So I threw it in the river. I was like, gone with you. And I told God that day, I was like, this is between you and me. Like, if I'm going to get
Mm.
over this, you're going to have to do it. I'm not telling anyone. I'm not
Mm.
telling my future husband. No one will know except for you.
Yeah.
And that was not his plan, thankfully. Um, so the next year at uh, Katie and I went to two different universities, and there was this big worship night at my school, and I finally had some little bit of peace about telling
Mm.
Katie.
Yeah.
Um, and so I just ran with it. I was like, okay, I got to
Mm.
go with this, or it's not going to happen.
It's that feeling
And
you're just like, I know I have to do this now.
yes, yeah. And so I texted her, just this novel of a text message, and I told her everything. And I ended it with, I understand if you don't want to be my friend anymore. Like, I just
Mm.
had to tell you.
Yeah.
And she texted back. She was she was going to a concert with some friends. So bad timing for all of us for this life-changing moment that was about to happen.
Mhm.
Um, she texted back and said she was crying right now because she was in the exact same situation.
Wow.
And our minds were just blown. And we couldn't even
Yeah.
talk because she was going to a concert and she was with other people.
That's amazing that the first time you actually opened up and were able to share about it, that it wasn't that reinforcing of I'm the only one that's dealing with this. I'm the only girl that has this problem. But your best friend goes, actually, I'm in the exact same boat, because I'm guessing up until that point, like it had probably been a really lonely, isolating experience, right?
Mhm. Yeah. And it was crazy because we had known each other since, like, her struggle started when she was 12, mine when I was
Wow.
13, and we met when we were 14. So the
Wow.
entire time we had known each other and been literally best friends, like told each other
Mm.
everything. We had no idea. And I would have
No way.
never even guessed because
Mm.
both of us were so convinced that we were alone in this.
It's before you open up for the first time and you're kind of saying, all right, God, this is something that you and I are going to deal with together. No one else ever has to know about this. It it's kind of that humanness of not wanting to admit that this is
Yeah.
something we're issue with. And it's strange because we're admitting to God that this is an issue. We're admitting to God that this is something I'm struggling with, but I don't want to tell other people.
Yeah.
And one of the things we hear often is that it starts to make this feedback loop where you start to feel more and more ashamed because even though God knows, you can't seem to stop yourself and it keeps going in that loop. Was that your experience as well?
Oh yeah. Yeah, 100%. And I think it can be so easy to, as a Christian, to say, God is healer. God
Mm,
can help me overcome this, and kind of relying on that truth. It is truth,
mm,
but you're also missing a huge part of what it means to be following Christ, and that's
mm.
community.
Yeah.
And so it can be so easy to be like, no, but he's gonna help me here. Oh, sorry, my dogs are barking. Um, yeah, it can be so easy to say, me and you, God, like this is it,
Mm,
and to feel like that's an okay thing to do because you're
mm.
trusting God.
Yeah.
But I was just so overlooking, no, like this is, I'm still letting shame lead my decisions
Mm,
because I'm not telling other people.
mm,
And because I'm still actively struggling this with this, and I know in my heart like I can't overcome this without somebody else,
mm.
but I'm refusing because oh, I'm trusting God. Like no. I was still very much letting fear and shame like
Yeah.
lead what I was doing.
Yeah. But you did finally open up, Katie. And I'm
Yes.
guessing after that night when she wasn't at the concert, you guys probably had a chance to talk. And what was that like to actually be able to then open up and share that struggle with someone else?
Oh my gosh. It was the biggest weight lifted off of my
Mm,
shoulders. And for her too, because we were both it's so isolated and just
mm,
so convinced that we were alone. So we didn't even like have the words to say to each other. We were just like, what? Okay, so I guess start from the beginning. Like, what was
mm,
your story like? And when we were sharing, there were so many parallels between our story, between our two stories. And that's
mm.
what I found, even listening to Josh's episode on the
Yeah.
podcast.
Yeah.
So many parallels, even between, an American woman and an Australian man.
Mm,
Like, I just think the enemy does what works,
yeah.
and it works for a lot of people.
Mm,
And so the more you share, and the more both Katie and I shared even afterwards with other people, there were just so many similarities between our stories. Um, and so yeah, it was a huge weight lifted off of our shoulders. Yeah.
that's amazing that you found your best friend was dealing with the same thing. As much as it's not amazing that you were both struggling with the same thing, but
Right.
to finally be able to have someone that you can share the struggle with, share the journey with as well. But you were still both two girls who thought you were the only girls who dealt with this problem.
Hmm.
And this is like going back to what you're saying about how when it's spoken about in church, guys, men, if you struggle with pornography, blah 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 blah, here's what you can do, reach out to someone, speak to your pastor, speak to one of your friends and start that journey. But it's never talked about, well, what do you do if you're a girl? And that's the
Hmm.
case. And with you both feeling like you were the only girls that struggled with this, what was the next step? How did you begin to try and work out what you do about it now that you had at
Yeah.
least shared with each other?
We guessed. We trial and error, and we learned a lot from that. So we
Mm,
had no idea because we searched for resources for women, And
Mm.
even when I was still trying to keep this to myself, I would Google Christian women and
Yeah.
porn addiction,
Yeah.
and there was nothing. We couldn't find
Mm.
anything. And I know Katie at one point told her mom and
Mm.
just said, I'm telling you, I don't want to talk about it anymore. Like, but I'm just telling you. And her mom very subtly gave her a book from the church library. And she said she read it and it was about porn addiction, but it was for men. And
Mm.
she said it just made her feel even more isolated,
Oh,
even
wow.
though it was like a helpful book. She was like, this doesn't apply to me. Like, this just makes me feel alone even more than I already did. And so we didn't have any guidance. And so we just sort of guessed. We were like, okay, call me if you're tempted, I guess. But
Mm.
that was so easy to not do,
Yeah.
especially because we were virtual at this point. We were
Yeah.
at two different colleges and so the next year after I had told her, we kind of went through a year of, okay, we're going to send encouraging Bible verses every day. We're going to call each other when we're tempted. We used a lot of fear tactics, which do not
Mm.
work. We
Mm.
would say things like, if you watch porn again, you have to pay me $1.
Mm.
Or if you watch porn, you have to tell your dad. Or we would just kind of threaten each other. And it would end up neither of us would tell the other person and we
Yeah.
would keep it secret, and then there was more shame because I was keeping a
Yeah.
secret from Katie that we had told each other, and that fear tactics do not work.
Mm.
And so we did trial and error for a while. The next year I decided I needed to tell somebody who was physically with me because it was so easy to lie to Katie virtually. Like, I wasn't looking her in the eyes, we weren't sitting
Yeah.
down with each other. And so I told my Bible study leader at the time,
Mm.
and I loved it was so refreshing and thinking back on my whole journey because she was one of the very few people who did not struggle with porn
Oh, wow.
that I told. And so
Yeah.
she really stands out because she still met me. I know so many people struggle with, oh, if they don't struggle with it, they're not going to understand.
Yeah.
No, they could still
Mm.
be a good friend. They could still give you grace and point you back to Jesus.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what she did. She was just like, "Okay, thanks for telling me." Like, and she
Mm.
prayed with me, and she did her own research and she tried to find
Oh, wow.
resources for me. But again, at the time there weren't many, but she found Dirty Girls Come Clean by Crystal Raynaud Day now. And it was like the one book out there that we could find. And
Mm.
so she was like, I found this one. And she ended up gifting it to me because I was so afraid to buy it for myself
Yeah.
because I thought my parents would see my credit card statement and know what I had done. And so she was like, you know what? I'm just going to give it to you. Like, she bought it and she gifted it to
Mm.
me. And that ended up being such a helpful resource for me
Mm.
for starting out kind of my recovery journey.
Yeah.
So that was my next step. And Katie had similar stories at her university, opening up to people
Mm.
who were physically with her. And that's kind of how our college experience went. We just shared with more and more people. And we
Right.
realized, okay, almost every girl that we're telling also struggles with porn.
Wow.
Like, this is not just me. This is not just me and Katie. It's almost everyone. Like I said, that Bible study leader was like, she stands out because she did not.
Right. Yeah.
Everybody else did. And so we both just realized how much of an epidemic this is for
Mm.
everybody. And that kind of brings us to we've always bonded over the verse Esther 4:14, that for such a time as perhaps you were born for such a time as this.
Mm.
And we always thought, what if God made us friends for this reason? Like
Yeah.
you said, it's not fun that we both struggle with this, but
Mm.
the fact that we found each other and we're best
Yeah.
friends and told each other. And so we always wanted to do something for other girls
Mm.
and to get it out there and to let them know that they're not alone.
Yeah.
But we had our own healing to do, and so we did that. And then during the pandemic in 2020, I was just like, why don't we just start an Instagram page?
Yeah.
Like, let's just do it. I don't know what
We've all
this is
got
gonna look
time on our
like.
hands now.
Exactly. We're not doing anything. Let's just start an Instagram. And up until that point, we had brainstormed so many ideas and they all kind of flopped, but we were just like, let's do it. And so we just started posting, just sharing our stories. And like
Mm.
our heart behind it was just so other women would know that they're not alone.
Yeah.
And Katie decided to make a reel, like an Instagram reel, and like at, we had made like cute little reels, but she was like, "I'm gonna put my face on there. I'm gonna do it."
Mm.
And so she did, and it just blew up. And the more
Mm.
reels we made, we would wake up to like hundreds of new followers and messages saying like, "Wait, this is for women?" Like
Yeah.
I thought I was alone. Like I didn't know that other women struggled with this. Like thank you for this page. And it just exploded and we were just it was just so cool and God has brought us
Mm.
like so far and in so many different directions now and we just kind of started and we were like, "Okay, God, do your thing." And he did. So that's where we're at now.
Yeah, and here you are, running this ministry that is actually providing the resources that you were looking for when you were struggling with it,
Yeah.
and that wasn't there, which is incredible. Because, like you say, even now to this day, people find your ministry, find the Instagram, and just like, wait, this is for women. This
Yeah.
is for me. I'm not the only one going through this,
Yeah.
and it's this wonderful it's this wonderful reoccurring story over and over again about people who struggle with this, feeling so alone and keeping it to themselves and thinking they're the only one. But the minute it is brought into the light, there is the beginning of that healing journey, or the
Yeah.
potential for that healing journey. Let's talk a bit about your own healing journey, if we can, because I'm sure there'll be people that'll be listening and going, "Okay, well, cool. She seems to have gone through a healing journey, but what did she do? I don't. How did she get to that point?"
Yeah. Yeah. That was a long journey.
Mm.
um I think between telling Katie for the very first time and watching my last porn video, 6
Mm.
years went by.
Yeah.
And so I know that some people have a miraculous immediate
Mm.
healing and that's amazing and I absolutely believe God can do that. But for me, I think there was a lot of pride and stubbornness and
Mm.
shame that needed to be broken down over the
Yeah.
years. And so I and again, there weren't many resources to kind of guide me through this. So I was just kind of guessing a lot. But God led me to a lot of people to share this with. And like I
Mm.
said, every person who said me too, and even the people who didn't, I have
Mm.
amazing experiences of sharing this with friends and small group leaders and small groups. And even the girls who don't struggle with porn, they always share something that they are going through. And so I
Mm.
saw like that vulnerability leads to vulnerability
Yeah.
and it was just so cool for it was like so healing for both parties even
Mm.
if they didn't struggle with porn. So it was a lot my healing happened a lot through confession and through bringing this to
Mm.
community, not just once but continuously.
Yeah.
Um and making sure the people in my trusted group, if I joined a new small group the next year or had a new mentor, that they knew that this was a part of my journey and something
Yeah.
that I was struggling with and something that even now
Mm.
that I've overcome, people in my life know that this has been a struggle for me
Yeah.
in case it comes back up or in case I'm tempted again.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, just continuously bringing it into the light. I was very stubborn. Another thing that was helpful for me, but it took a while for me to do, was setting guardrails on my
Yeah.
technology.
Yep.
Um, I used the excuse for a long time where I was like, well, isn't the point for me to not be tempted by pornography when it's right there next to me? Like I
Mm.
have it easy access on my phone. Isn't the ultimate goal to not be tempted
Mm.
when when it's available? Um, and that made me not get any guardrails, not get any
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
accountability softwares or delete social media.
Mm.
And then also the times that I would delete social media. and I would still struggle, still being able to recall porn images
Mm,
in my
mm,
head and still act upon that. Um, I was like, well, that was pointless. So I might as well get the social media back if I'm
yep.
still just able to think about it. And it took
Mm,
me a while, and it was a lot of pride and stubbornness to just be like, I need to sacrifice this. I need to literally surrender this to God
mm,
and let that healing happen through that. Because
mm,
I think it allowed me to not, when I was triggered, to not have easy access and just go right back to it.
yeah.
Um, and yeah, I was still very much tempted, and it took a while for my brain to kind of get back to its normal. Um, but it was so helpful over time because I wasn't able to go to porn right away. I had
Mm,
to sit with whatever I was going through and be like,
mm,
okay, I have 2 seconds where I'm not actively jumping into porn. Let me talk to God about this.
yeah.
Let me
Yeah.
text a friend.
Because the goal is not to not feel temptation. Like
Yeah,
that's one of the things that's sometimes, yeah, we get around the wrong way. We're just like, okay, my goal is to be free of this. I won't be tempted by it anymore. But like the reality is, if we look to Jesus, who's our example of what it's like to live a sinless, blameless life, he was tempted. He went and
yeah,
faced temptation. He had to go through the temptation. It's what he did in response to that which
exactly.
showed him to be without sin rather than the fact that temptation came up at all.
Yep. I think that's a super common thing where girls are like, well, I confessed once. Why am I still struggling with this? No,
Mm.
this isn't active. It's a process. And we
Yeah,
have to continue to do that, not just with this sin, with everything
yeah,
and bringing it into the light continuously. Um, yeah, that's something that I struggled with for a long time is being
mm.
like, oh, if I set these guardrails but I'm still tempted, then it wasn't necessary, wasn't helpful for me to set that guardrail. But
Yeah,
that wasn't reality.
yeah. I want to talk about a different dynamic that, as well as being a woman, you bring to this compared to when we've talked about it in the past. Um, is that you're married. And
Hmm.
so being quite open about the fact that this has been a struggle of yours and this has been part of your journey. And then, beginning a relationship, getting engaged, getting married, and having to navigate porn addiction or recovery from porn addiction in the context of a marriage relationship. So, what was it like to meet your then future husband and as things go along to have to open up about this?
Hmm. Yeah. Um, he has shared his story on the Victory Collective, so
Okay.
I have permission
Nice.
to share this. Let me start with that.
Yep.
Um, we started dating, and I don't totally remember how far into it we had this conversation,
Mm,
but I had told him that I was still struggling with something, but I didn't want to talk about it yet. Like I wasn't ready. I'll talk about it later, but
yeah.
not right now.
Baby
And so
step
that
of
was
confession, right?
yeah. So that
There's
was kind
something,
of
but I'm not going to say what.
exactly. That was kind of in his mind. Uh, and he said he actually thought that that's what it was.
Wow.
So I'm like, interesting. Because he had known other girls who struggle with this, which is like,
Mm,
that was surprising to me, but that was a
mm,
side note. Um, but later he came forward to me and he was like, I want to confess something to you. I
mm,
have been struggling with porn since I was 12.
yeah.
And we started dating and I stopped for a while, but it's still a very strong temptation for me. And
Mm,
I just wanted to let you know. And he said he went into that conversation knowing I was going to break up with him,
mm,
knowing that I was going to judge him.
yeah.
And I was like, hey, me too. High five, dude. And he was like, wait. He was like, wait, what? I was like, yeah, that's been my story too since I was 13.
Mm,
And so it just brought us so much closer together
mm,
where we both thought, I mean, he entered that conversation thinking it was going to tear us apart,
yeah.
but it kind of made us trust each other more.
Mm,
That he wasn't hiding it or that I wasn't hiding it. We were like
yeah.
both bringing it forward into the relationship.
Mm,
And so we both individually worked on our healing while we were in a relationship, but we weren't like accountability partners or anything.
Mm,
Um, I don't think that's wise, but we both individually did our own thing.
mm,
Um, and even within marriage, we brought it up during premarital counseling, and
yeah.
within marriage, we try to keep it a frequent conversation because we
Mm,
know that it could be a temptation.
yeah.
Um, so we check in. I still have accountability or accountable to you on my devices, and he still gets all my notifications and
Mm,
everything. And so it's still very much present conversation in our
mm,
marriage, even though it's not like an active struggle anymore.
yeah.
Um,
But that
but
in
yeah,
and of itself is a bit of a surprise, probably for some people, because there seems to be this picture painted sometimes that any kind of sexual sin or temptation or anything like that, once you're married, well, that's fine because you're married now and you've got a husband or a wife, and
hmm
so you're allowed to do all the things you otherwise weren't before marriage, and so all that stuff goes away. But it doesn't, right?
oh no, no, because it's not about sex at all.
Mm,
Like porn addiction is not about. It's not. It's not a sex addiction.
mm,
You're using porn as a band-aid over something else.
mm,
And so whether that's you're struggling with intimacy or that's how you cope with anger,
mm,
there's a deep wound that you are trying to cover with
mm,
pornography, and that's just your coping mechanism.
mm,
And so when you get married, yeah, you can have sex with your husband, but you still have this thing that you need to process. You
mm,
still have this root heart issue that you haven't addressed. And so porn is not going to go away just because you can do all this stuff. Um, or you're going to find some other band-aid to put on top of it.
mm,
Um, but ultimately that's what you need to get to is that heart
yeah.
issue that you're struggling with because that does not go away just because you get married.
Yeah, that's it. And I think that's something that again probably isn't talked about as much as it probably needs to be, and it wasn't when I went through pre-marriage counselling. I'm kind of a bit more glad to hear that younger people that I know that go through pre-marriage counselling are kind of a bit more brought into the fact that hey, marriage isn't going to fix all your problems.
Yeah.
Marriage isn't going to make all your issues go away. Um, sometimes it amplifies them or highlights them more
Yeah.
because you're now living with someone all the time. Um, but yeah, there's a really encouraging story there about two people that find each other and God has brought together that have dealt with the same thing, have gone through the same struggles, and are able to be open with it. You said
hmm
how it's not currently a issue or a temptation for you guys, but you still keep it part of the conversation because one day it could be. Is that something that's
hmm
always in the back of your mind?
Not um not actively.
Mm,
I
okay.
I guess so I used to think that I would struggle with this forever, that this would
Mm,
always be like I would have to wake up and fight every day to resist this, like it would be
mm,
tension every day.
mm,
And that's not the case anymore.
mm.
And I hope that that's hope for somebody because I
Yeah.
know that many people are stuck in I'm just going to fight this forever. Like this is
Mm,
always going to be present. And I'm so thankful it's not. Like I don't have to wake up every day and I used to say a morning prayer where I was like, "Okay, God, like help me through this.
mm.
Okay, like today, I need to get through today." And it was a
Yep.
daily battle.
Yeah.
Now it's not a daily battle,
Mm,
but I know that um I know that it could come up. Like for instance, when I was pregnant with my son, there were a few times that all of a sudden, like, it just I was like, "I could watch porn," and it just
mm,
popped into my head. I don't know if it was the pregnancy hormones or
mm,
I was, like, in pain, like, uncomfortable, and that had been my pain relief for so
mm.
long. I don't know what it was, but it just came back up. Or the fact that Satan hates babies, and he was tempting me in that time. But, whatever it was, yeah, it just came back up, and I was like, "Wait a second. no, like I don't want this. And so I had to sit with that and be like, okay, why is this coming back? And in that moment, I was so grateful that I still had accountable to you because
Mm,
I couldn't just like I could have so easily just been like, okay, I'm just gonna pull it up online. Um, and so yeah, it's not to answer your question, I guess, not actively in the back of my mind at all times every day, but I try to keep it
mm.
there. I
Yeah.
don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah. No, it makes sense because you go, okay, well, this is, you know, understanding it for what it was. It's a band aid for something that you were trying to wrestle with, work through, hurt your, someone might be trying to cover up or something like that.
Yeah.
Even if they beat the addiction, if that's been so ingrained in their bodies and their minds for so long of this is how I cope with this thing, if something causes that root cause to come back up, then yeah, there's every chance that their body and mind's going to go, well, this is how I used to deal with it. So that
Yeah.
temptation is going to come back. It makes a whole lot of sense. Um, I want to talk about how fear and shame don't work because it's one of the things that you kept saying throughout your story about when you and Katie were trying to figure out how do we try and fight this, how do we beat this, now that we've finally opened up and kind of confessed to each other and brought some accountability into it, what do we do to fight it? But you kept saying
Mhm.
you try these things but fear doesn't work. What Why doesn't fear work if you know why, and but also then what does work?
Mm.
How do we replace those kind of fear tactics to actually move to a space of healing?
Mhm. I had to learn I don't know what Bible verses these are, but there is no fear in love.
Mm,
That's one of them. Don't know where that is, but there is no fear in love, and God is love. And
mm,
those two verses to me were what kind of pulled me out of that mindset
mm,
where fear was what was keeping me in isolation. Like fear
mm.
was I was so afraid to lose relationships. I was so
Yeah.
afraid people would judge me, and shame kept me in this little hidden darkness.
Mm.
But yet, when I was trying to get out of that, I thought that fear was going to somehow all of a sudden be a good thing and pull me out of that darkness.
Mm,
And so I had to learn like, no, God he doesn't save us through fear. He
mm,
doesn't pull us out of any darkness with fear because there is no fear in love and God is love.
yeah.
And I just think that I had to learn just God God pulls us out of that with his grace. And
Mm,
so if I'm not approaching my own healing with Christ's grace as the center of it, it is
mm,
not going to work out for me.
yeah.
Um and it's the enemy that wants to keep us in that shame and that fear. And so just looking back, I was like, of course fear didn't work because that wasn't from the Lord. He wouldn't
Mm,
do that. And so yeah, I would say approach it with God's grace at the center of your healing. And that has so much to do with community. And I know
mm,
that that's so scary,
mhm,
but the grace that you experience from telling someone and either them saying, "Yeah, I'm going through that too," or "I've never gone through that, but I still love you and Jesus still loves you."
mm,
That grace in that moment is so reflective of Christ's grace
yeah.
and what he did for us.
Mm,
And that can only be experienced in community and
mm,
confessing your dark secrets to those who love you and who love
mm.
Jesus. Um yeah. Did that answer your
Yeah.
question?
Yeah, it does. And like one of the things you said to me in our pre-interview was it wasn't until the shame was lifted for you that your healing actually began.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that people have it I probably said this too, like people have it so backwards where
Mm,
they think I need to heal from this and then I'll tell people.
yeah.
And I can be like, "Hey, 5 years ago I struggled with porn, but I don't anymore."
Mm,
But that's not how that keeps you in that shame and that darkness for so
mm,
long, when in reality you have to reverse it. You have to bring it before community
mm,
and that shame is then lifted, and then your healing can start. Um, and so it feels so against everything that our flesh wants to do, but
Mm,
it is the one course of actual healing that you can take.
mm. Yeah, that's amazing. There was a couple of verses there that you kind of couldn't quite pinpoint, but I'm there with you. I know they're in there somewhere. But are there other passages or other verses at various times throughout your journey that have been helpful or impactful for you?
Mhm. Yeah. I do have these ones up.
Yeah.
1 Corinthians 10:13 says, "No temptation has overtaken you except what is common to mankind. And God is faithful. He will not let you be tempted beyond what you can bear. But when you are tempted, He will provide a way out so that you can endure it." And that one's
Mm,
been really huge. Um, Even again, just thinking of listening to Josh's episode on here, how no temptation is overtaking you that's not common to mankind across the globe,
mm,
across men and women and
yeah.
children, and um, so that we talk about that one a lot on the Victory Collective because we
Mm,
want to reiterate people people are going through this, not just men,
yeah.
but people. Um, and James 5:16 as well. Therefore confess your sins to each other and pray for each other so that you may be healed. The prayer of a righteous person is powerful and effective.
Mm,
That one as well, I think, tells you a lot about how to confess and who to confess to and why it's so important.
yeah. And that really underpins everything you've just been saying about how it's, we don't try and get fixed or healed first and then say, hey, this is something I used to deal with. It's we have to be confessing to each other. We have to be opening up to the people that are around us, our brothers and sisters in Christ, and walking
Hmm.
through it with them so that they can be praying for us. They can be showing God's grace to us in that, and
Yeah.
they can be walking with us through what we're struggling with. Um, I want to talk
Yeah.
about what someone who might be struggling with this can do, and I think this probably ties in with also sharing like what the Victory Collective actually does, and how someone that might be dealing with this, and a woman specifically who might be dealing with this, can work through what they're facing.
Hmm. Yeah. So a big part of what we wanted to do with the Victory Collective is share as many resources as we can,
Mm,
make it kind of a one-stop shop for women who struggle with porn, and they can
yeah.
find a book or podcast or support group or whatever
Mm,
they feel like they need in that season. So on our website, thevictorycollective.net, we have a whole resources page.
amazing.
And my hope is that a woman will go to it and be like, I don't really know what I need, but I'm going to peruse these, and maybe they'll find a book that's so helpful or a podcast or
Yeah.
whatever. Um, and so that's, first and foremost, just go explore our resources page and see what's
Yeah.
out there. Because thankfully, there are resources out there now for women, and those
Yeah.
are on the rise. So that's super exciting. We do have a small group, like an accountability group through the Relay
Mm,
app. We have two teams, and you can go to our uh, it's on the resources page, but also on our Instagram, just the link in the
mm,
bio. You can join one of our relay teams, and that's other girls who are also trying to overcome porn.
wow.
And so that's an amazing community, um, especially if you're not quite ready to open up to someone in your own life.
Mm,
I I want to emphasize that it's not a replacement to that.
yeah.
It is
Yeah.
so much more important to tell someone who knows you and is walking alongside you,
Mm,
um, even though that's way scarier because it feels like you have more to lose. But please do that. So important. But it's still good to have girls who know what you're going through and
mm,
are able to be like, yeah, I struggle with that too. And here's how I got through it, or here's what I
mm,
do. Um, and so if you're not ready to tell somebody yet, or if you have and you still would like that support, that is another great place to start, is to join one of our relay teams.
yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing. Amanda, thank you so much for sharing with us, sharing your story with us, and sharing so vulnerably. Because, yeah, like you say, it's a hard thing to talk about,
Mhm.
And it's not something that you get to just kind of be brave once and say, hey, I dealt with this once. But, confession is an ongoing thing, and sharing our stories is an ongoing thing, because
Mhm.
that's how we actually begin to experience freedom.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm really excited to hear about what you and Katie are doing through the Victory Collective, and so excited that there are resources for women and girls out there who are struggling with this, that they're not going to be in that same position where you were, of madly Googling, trying to find some resources to help, and there being nothing out there.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's people like you sharing stories that, hey, this is not just you, and you can get through this, and you can
Mhm.
find freedom from this. So Amanda, thank you so much for being with us.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us today. To find out more about the Victory Collective and what they do, you can find them on Instagram or head to their website. The links will be down below. Now, next episode, we're going to chat with a familiar voice, Arkos Balog, who shared his own story of dealing with anxiety back in episode 24. This time, in honour of Movember and other men's mental health initiatives around the world, Arkos and I, two Aussie blokes, will be exploring why men don't talk about their feelings, why we should, and what we can do about it. So to be the first to hear when that drops, you can head to anxiousfaith.org and sign up to our mailing list, or simply subscribe to us here on YouTube or to the podcast on your platform of choice. And for even more content and to join the growing community, find us on Instagram. We'd love to connect with you over there. And if you've been helped or encouraged by Anxious Faith, would you consider partnering with us to help reach even more people? As a non-profit ministry, everything we do is made possible by people like you. We'd love you to consider supporting us, whether that's praying for our team in this work, sharing our resources in your circles, or contributing towards our ministry costs so we can help keep producing this podcast. So to join us in our mission to open up the conversation around faith and mental health, check out our blog or other resources, sign up to our mailing list, or connect with us on socials, head to our website at anxiousfaith.org or hit the link in the description. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next episode.